Jonathan Quick, Artemi Panarin, and Alexis Lafreniere come up clutch for the Rangers in a 2-1 overtime win over the Avalanche. But for real now, do we have a goalie controversy?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blueshirts fans, to episode number 999 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your best bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Rangers coming out of the break, long layoff there, more than a week. They come away with a thrilling 2-1 win over the Colorado Avalanche. Obviously, it was not perfect. There's a lot of things we're going to talk about that it seems like the Rangers could certainly do a little bit better. But regardless, I think when you're going up against a team that is among the truly elite teams in this league and has obviously been playing very well recently in general, and you're down by a goal in the third period with less than 10 minutes to go, and you find a way to tie it, then win it in overtime, I think pretty much everybody has to take that and has to feel at least somewhat good about a win like that. I mean, I know I was jumping out of my seat when Lafreniere scored that overtime winner in, a couple of minutes into the extra time there, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one who was doing that, among Ranger fans. But we got to start with Jonathan Quick. He was, once again, absolutely fantastic in this game. It's a pretty evergreen statement that I've been making pretty much the entire season here. But he just continues to defy, smash all expectations. He ends up stopping 32 of 33 shots. The Rangers, of course, needed every single one of those saves that he made. I thought he made a bunch of his best saves when the Rangers were down 1-0 in this game. He also allowed them to overcome what I thought was a pretty shaky start for the Rangers, and we'll elaborate on that a little bit later. You also had the Avalanche getting 3 power play opportunities in the first period. They went 0 for 3, and of course, that's a team effort. The Ranger penalty killers, I thought, looked good, while the Avs had the man advantage during the first period a couple different times there. But regardless, cliche or not, you need your goalie to be your best penalty killer, and Quick was just as sharp when the Rangers were shorthanded as he was when the Rangers, were playing 5v5 on this night. And obviously, he was rightfully the number one star of this game, even had the secondary assist on the overtime game winner for the Rangers. And again, we're getting a little bit of ahead of ourselves there. We'll get back to that a little bit later. But the one thing I want to talk about right now is this constantly emerging storyline that I don't think can really be ignored or overshadowed or even downplayed for that much longer. I will say, I feel like Steve Valiquette, after this game, he was the first, Ranger analyst or beat writer or podcaster, or even, a couple of fans of him, I'm sure, have done it, but he's the first, prominent Ranger media member that I think is really kind of gone there, quote unquote, and just flat out said after the game, this is, I'm paraphrasing maybe just a little bit, but he basically said after the game, my vote is for Jonathan Quick for starting goalie until proven otherwise. And it's gotten to the point where I don't know that we can ignore the elephant in the room all that much longer. I know Igor Shesterkin just made the All-Star team and obviously played in the All-Star game, but he has been outplayed in just about every conceivable way by his 38-year-old backup goalie this season. I realize, that's not your typical run-of-the-mill 38-year-old goalie. It's Jonathan Quick. The guy's a legend, slam dunk Hall of Famer, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, the best player on those Kings teams that won those 2 Stanley Cups, and obviously has, settled into a backup role. We weren't so sure that, Jonathan Quick, when has this guy ever been a backup in his life? But it's something that he's become acclimated with, and obviously he played very good here. He played very well in the Senators game before the break. I said before this game happened, because we knew in our last episode, again, before this game against the Avalanche occurred, that Jonathan Quick was going to be between the pipes for this game for the Rangers. And I said I wouldn't really read too much into it. Laviolette said, before the game that was basically the Rangers' mindset. That was their game plan coming out of the All-Star break here. Again, Igor played in the All-Star game, and you've got, a game not too long after that against the Avalanche, and you can throw Jonathan Quick out there, and he can handle the first game back. It's not unprecedented either. The Rangers under Gerard Gallant actually did the same thing last year. Igor Shesterkin, after the All-Star break, did not start the first game back. They went with Yaroslav Halak, and that was that crazy 5-4 overtime win that they had over the Flames. But the reason also that I said that I wouldn't read too much into this decision to go with Quick here is because I figured that, they go with Quick here and they would go with Igor against the Lightning because, looking at the lay of the land and the schedule coming up, and obviously the fact that the Rangers just had more than a week off, I figured that you'd probably be looking at Igor getting one of the first 2 games out of the break, Quick getting the other one. And again, you reason that Igor just played in the All-Star game. You go with Quick the first game back, and then a favorable matchup for Igor Shesterkin against the Lightning. Now, on paper, that's not a favorable matchup for any goalie, but it does seem like Igor's always up for those games against Tampa, and he's really had their number lately. He's basically owned them the last couple of seasons here, been very, very good against them. Even in the playoffs a couple of years ago, the conference final, Igor was very good in that series. He's certainly not the reason why the Rangers, lost that series in 6 games. But I figured, again, Quick for the first game, Igor for the second one. Apparently, that is not going to be the case because just before I hit record here, the Rangers were practicing, and a tweet goes out from Arthur Staple that Jonathan Quick was the first goalie off the ice at Ranger practice a little bit earlier today on Tuesday here. And that doesn't really mean that it's official. The Rangers haven't made an announcement where, okay, this guy is definitely starting against Tampa, but the first goalie off the ice usually is an indication of who will play. It is Jonathan Quick. And now some eyebrows are going to start to go up because you've had this lengthy layoff here, and you're giving Jonathan Quick both of the first 2 games against 2 tough opponents out of the break, right to start things off here. And he also got the final game before the All-Star break. Now, that was the second game of a back-to-back against the Senators there, so it made sense at the time. But anyway you slice it here, we're looking at a stretch of about, I don't know, what is it, like getting close to, it's got to be about a week and a half right now, or even approaching 2 weeks. I don't know the exact number of days, but that's a long time for Igor Shesterkin to go without starting a game for the New York Rangers. Now, of course, this could just mean that it's not like a legitimate benching. In a sense it is, but it might just be a situation where the Rangers are going to look to go with the hot hand for a little while here. And right now that's Jonathan Quick. Kind of reminds me of a few years ago, more than a few years ago, but, Antti Ranta got really hot. Lundqvist was dealing with a minor injury, and Lundqvist was still basically prime Lundqvist at that point. But Ranta was just on fire, and they had to kind of ride the hot hand for a little while there. And that's what they did. And of course, Lundqvist eventually got the net back. Something similar could happen with Igor Shesterkin here. But again, you are 50 games into the season now. It's getting very, very difficult to overlook the discrepancy in the stats between these players. If you just look at the eye test, if you look at, how they fare in certain situations during the game, if Quick gives up an early goal, it wasn't like a super early goal that he allowed to McKinnon in this game, but it was the first period. He can slam the door. Igor Shesterkin hasn't really been doing that. You kind of know how it's going to go this season for Igor Shesterkin based on how, like, the first 10 minutes, the first 15 minutes maybe, or maybe even the entire first period, but based on how the early parts of the game goes, that's usually how it's going to go for Igor Shesterkin the rest of the night. And there just hasn't been too many examples of him closing the door if he gives up an early goal or an early couple of goals or a soft goal, whatever the situation might be. It seems like it's been snowballing a little bit on Igor Shesterkin, and that hasn't really been the case with Quick. Quick's just been solid night in and night out, and if he does give up a goal, it doesn't seem to bother him too much. I saw somebody on Twitter pose the question, if the playoffs started right now, do you go with Igor Shesterkin or Jonathan Quick? And it's a tough decision. It's a much tougher decision than I think any of us probably could have possibly anticipated that it would be at this point in the season. And as I mentioned, when the Rangers signed Jonathan Quick in the offseason, I like the move. I think I like the move more than most Ranger fans. Just thought, you should never count out a legend. And this is somebody that, the Rangers don't have money to spend on a backup goalie anyway. Jonathan Quick probably makes some sense. But now, you're in a situation where you have a legitimate goalie controversy here. And that's something that I don't think anybody could have possibly seen coming as we approach the start of this season. But as far as, to answer that question right now, right here, the way things have been going, I might have to give Jonathan Quick a game 1 start if the playoffs, once again, began right now. It's not a small sample size anymore. One goalie has clearly outperformed the other. If you just look at the stats, if you just look at the eye test, if you take away the fact, all their statuses and their accolades that they've won, the fact that, Jonathan Quick is 38 years old, you take that off the table. You take the fact that Igor's been amazing his first 4 seasons in the league. You take that off the table. If you just look at how things stand right here, right now, I don't see how you can go with Igor Shesterkin over Jonathan Quick. But I will also say, I'm glad the playoffs don't start right now because, as I've maintained on here, I do think that if the Rangers are going to be the last team standing, they're going to be the team left on the ice, confetti falling if they're at home, and holding the Stanley Cup trophy over their heads and having, just an amazing moment and a moment that none of us will ever forget. If that is to occur, I gotta believe it's going to be Igor Shesterkin leading the charge. As good as Jonathan Quick has been, he's 38 years old. And again, never count out a legend. You never know what, somebody as good as him is capable of doing, even, at this point in his career, obviously being a veteran. But I just feel, again, that if the Rangers are to be the final team standing, the Stanley Cup champions, it's going to be because Igor Shesterkin regains, that Vezina form. He doesn't have to be as good as he was 2 years ago. Very difficult for any goalie to be that good for an entire season. But he's got to be at least somewhat close at it. He's got to be better than he's been to this point in the season. So I still think the Rangers' best chance is to go with Igor Shesterkin. But if this keeps going the way that it's going, and Igor just keeps struggling and can't really seem to get it on track, and Jonathan Quick continues to defy all expectations, and the Rangers are going to have a heck of a decision to make going into the first game of the first round of the playoffs. And that's a conversation. I mean, we'll keep having this conversation as the season progresses here because this is a storyline that's not going to be going away anytime soon unless, again, Igor Shesterkin really steps it up and really starts playing like the goalie that we all expect him to be. But yeah, it's definitely food for thought. It's definitely something we'll keep an eye on going forward here. We're also going to, throughout this episode, continue to talk about some of Jonathan Quick's best saves. It's going to pop up here and there because he was outstanding in this game, like we mentioned. In just a second, though, we're going to talk about the Rangers turning this game around in the third period, getting everything rolling, and getting back on track and playing their best hockey of the night. Obviously, tying this game, sending it to overtime, and ultimately coming away with 2 points. We're going to break down everything that happened there in just a second. First, though, we definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers, join today and you will get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Also, definitely want to let everybody know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, so we'll go ahead and keep everything rolling here and talk a little bit about this awesome rally that the Rangers had here. It wasn't looking so good after the first 2 periods. Obviously, you're only down a goal. You don't give up or anything like that, but they just weren't playing their best, and it kind of felt like somewhat more of the same. I mean, it's not like they were dreadful in this game, but they just seemed to be lacking that jump, maybe lacking energy at times in this game, and basically being suffocated by the Avalanche, who are, as Sam and Joe were pointing out, not necessarily known as a great defensive team, but a team that has tightened things up defensively recently. The second period was just a complete stalemate. I mean, I guess you got to give some props to the Rangers because they also kind of slowed down the Avalanche at least a little bit in the second period and played better in the second period, did the Rangers, than they did in the first. But again, you get into the third period and, 4 minutes into the third period, I wrote into my notes that the Rangers look better in these first 4 minutes here than they have looked for the entire first 40 minutes of this game put together. Just a lot more jump, more urgency, seemingly more scoring chances in the first 4 minutes of this third period than, once again, the entire first 2 periods put together. It all started with a really good opening shift from the Panarin line. You got Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere. You also had Fox and Lindgren on the ice. And hey, you know what? The way things have been going lately for the Rangers, obviously scuffling for the month of January, maybe this is the quintet that should be starting every period for the Rangers. We've seen the Rangers start different lines at the start of the game, at the start of different periods. The fourth line went through a stretch early in the season where I thought they were playing pretty well. And for a while there, they were getting rewarded by starting games, starting different periods. We've obviously seen the Mika line at the start of periods as well. But based on just this start that these guys got the Rangers off to in the third period, give me these five. Give me Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Fox, Lindgren for the foreseeable future at the start of every game, at the start of every period. I thought, again, they were outstanding. And while we're talking about Lindgren, should also mention that he got a puck. I think it was like a puck in the knee or something like that, and had to limp to the bench, drag himself to the bench. He got back out there, though. He delivered a big hit on either his next shift or the one after that. Big open ice hit for Ryan Lindgren there. And apparently he was back at practice a little bit earlier today. So there don't seem to be any indications that there's any problem there, or that he's in any danger of missing Wednesday's game against Tampa. So that's obviously good news. But as for this third period here, again, all started with a good first shift. And then you've got Trocheck attempting a one-timer on the rush. That was turned aside, but this was one of several scoring chances for the Rangers in the first couple minutes of the third period. And this kind of snapped the crowd out of it a little bit too. And I'm not blaming the crowd. I'm not blaming the fans. They didn't really have anything to get excited about early in this game. Like I said, just kind of a little bit of an uneven, kind of choppy game, a little bit sloppy by the Rangers from time to time, and just not really creating any scoring chances. There just wasn't, that sequence in the first two periods where everybody kind of comes alive and, okay, here we go. Now we're into this game, and, we're going to start scoring some goals here. None of that really happened, but they got into it here. It took just a couple of strong shifts by the Rangers at the start of the third period, and all of a sudden Madison Square Garden was rocking. And you also had another good chance here. Kakko passing out of the corner. He made a really nice move to get away from a defender in front to Braden Schneider. Puck may have hopped on him a little bit, but it looks like he just missed it in front of the net. You also had another scoring chance on the rush for the Rangers. Nice to see the Rangers creating off the rush and not being back on their heels against the rush. But you had Gustafsson. He's carrying the puck up the ice. He got it to Wheeler on the right side. Wheeler then centered for Mika Zibanejad. One-timer is turned aside. Right after this, though, Mika Zibanejad had the puck stolen from him in the neutral zone. You got McKinnon going in, a shot there, and a nice pad save by Jonathan Quick, because obviously, once again, that kept the deficit for the Rangers at just 1-0. And the way this game was going, the lack of scoring chances the first couple of periods, 2-0, again, not insurmountable, even in the third period, but you're not going to be feeling good about your chances if the Avalanche score a goal there. But yeah, the Rangers are kind of knocking on the door here. A lot of good chances to start the third period. And finally, they break through with the equalizer. This is basically all Panarin. It looked like he was, by this point in the game, double shifting. He was out there with Mika and Kreider for this one. You've got Panarin, circling in the offensive zone after Mika won the faceoff. There were a couple of quick passes. I believe Mika, did he have it? And then he got to Schneider, to Miller, and then to Panarin. But like I said, this was basically all Panarin. Panarin gets control of the puck behind the Avalanche net. He circles, to his right, goes like up around the entire rink, goes all the way into the right face-off circle. He basically did like a 3/4 circle of the entire offensive zone here. And then finally lets it fly. Mika Zibanejad's in front of the net, providing a screen. There was a lot of traffic there, and looks like it even got a piece of the far post. But regardless, Artemi Panarin gets it past Georgiev for the first Ranger goal of the night. This happens with less than 9 minutes to go, 1-1, and that is goal number 31 for Artemi Panarin. Not too long after this, I thought this was maybe Jonathan Quick's best save of the night, and certainly his most clutch save of the night. This is with it was a little bit after this. This was about 58 seconds to go. You've got Nathan McKinnon charging up the left side. He gets to kind of like the goal line area, passes back to Rantanen, and Rantanen takes a shot, and just an excellent point-blank stop by Jonathan Quick, keeping the score tied at 1-1 with 58 seconds to go. And a huge save because, you at least want to get 1 point here. Obviously, ideally, you win the game, but to give up the go-ahead goal, less than a minute left, and you think, okay, we're at least going to get to overtime, we'll at least have a chance, to not even have that happen, that would have been a little bit of a gut punch. And just, again, an excellent save there by Jonathan Quick, coming up clutch for the Rangers. We also had some excitement right at the buzzer. Adam Fox got a pretty good shot away, fought off by Alex Georgiev, and we head to the overtime period. And now we're set up for some heroics by Quick, by Mika, by Alexis Lafreniere, who got the game winner. One thing I do want to mention here, though, as far as the Rangers' approach in overtime, they do something at the start of every overtime that I find a little bit odd, and you guys can share your thoughts on this and let me know what you think. But it seems like for Laviolette and this Ranger coaching staff, their preferred 3 starters for overtime, and the 3 players that they go with at basically the start of every 3-on-3 overtime period are Mika, Kreider, and Miller. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I mean, these are good options. These are good players. And obviously, Mika and Kreider, you like their chances of possibly putting one in the net. But I don't know that this is the best option. I don't know that this is the best trio that the Rangers can possibly go with at the start of overtime. I would go with the trio that's typically second on the ice in overtime, and that's Trocheck, that's Panarin, and that's Fox. And there's a couple of reasons for this. For starters, that opening faceoff to begin overtime is absolutely huge. We've talked about that before on this podcast. If you lose that opening faceoff, it's possible you don't even touch the puck because there's such an emphasis on possession when you're dealing with 3-on-3 overtime hockey. And obviously, all that extra space, it increases the chances of a goal being scored. So if you lose that faceoff to begin overtime, you're kind of up against it a little bit. And that's almost exactly what happened here. Mika lost the faceoff, and you got Makar exploding to the net up the right side, put it a little bit wide, and the Rangers eventually got control of the puck. But it could have been over just as quickly as that. And you're going with Mika Zibanejad to take this faceoff, and Mika's a good faceoff guy. He's at 51.5% to start the season here. But you've got Vincent Trocheck, who's at 61.8% to start the season. I mean, which player has a better chance of winning that all-important first faceoff? Well, I got to say it's probably Vincent Trocheck. And on top of that, I mean, do you really not want Panarin on the ice to start overtime? I mean, look at the season that this guy's having. Look at the amount of points that he produces on a nightly basis. He's in the MVP consideration. And now, 3-versus-3 overtime hockey, you give a player like that all this extra real estate, all this extra space. Why is he not starting the overtime period? And as far as Fox versus Miller, I mean, you can go with either one there. But Adam Fox, we talked about, an excellent two-way defenseman he is. Obviously, in overtime, odd man rushes are not a rare occurrence because there's not a lot of players out there. And we've talked about how good Adam Fox is being the lone guy back when defending a 2-on-1. On top of that, a big part of Chris Kreider's game is getting in front of the net and looking for those deflections. And that's all well and good. And I mean, maybe he can pull that off in overtime too. But I don't know, 3-on-3 overtime, you can't really just park yourself in front of the net like you can when it's 5v5 because, again, there's so much open space out there and you got to be really aware of what's going on. I don't know that setting up shop in front of the net, I mean, you can do that, but is that really the best approach for 3-versus-3 hockey? I'm not so sure that it is. So for me, there's just a lot of reasons why, and it's nothing against Mika or Kreider or Miller, but I think the better option is Panarin and Trocheck and Fox. So rant over there or opinion over there, I guess we shall say. But, again, Rangers, it worked out. I can't argue with the result here because obviously they won the game. Avalanche eventually got possession of the puck, and you had Quick deflecting a shot by McKinnon with his glove. It went out of play. He followed up with a tough save on Taze not too long after that. You get the play stoppage there. And then you've got Goodrow, Lafreniere, and Fox on the ice. Goodrow wins the faceoff and then immediately leaves the ice to get Mika Zibanejad back out there. It was a defensive zone draw, so you can see why maybe you'd want Goodrow on the ice, although, you could probably go with Mika there. They're about the same as far as faceoff winning percentage and both known as good defensive, forwards. So that might have been overthinking it a little bit. Bottom line, Goodrow won the faceoff. That's what counts. And there's a situation here where the Avalanche have almost, they got the puck back and they play the puck forward, and Jonathan Quick has to come way, way out of his net to go get the loose puck up the left side there, and Quick gets to it and makes a pass to the center of the ice to Alexis Lafreniere. Now, he did connect on this pass, but I could not have possibly been the only Ranger fan holding my breath here because Quick kind of shanked his pass a little bit, and the Avalanche player, I think it might have been Taze, he kind of got in the way of the passing lane or came close to doing so. If Taze would have knocked this puck down, he's got an open path right to an empty net, and he's going to score, and there's nothing that anybody would have been able to do about it. So I definitely held my breath there, but bottom line, Quick does complete the pass. He gets it to Lafreniere. Lafreniere goes up the middle of the ice in the neutral zone, passes to his right to Mika. Mika goes over the blue line, up the right side. Little drop pass for Alexis Lafreniere. Lafreniere's moving up the right side into the right faceoff circle, stops on a dime, makes a move back to his left, and just whips a quick shot into the far side of the net, and he scores, gives the Rangers a 2-1 win. That's a hell of a win for the Rangers coming out of the break. And again, it was not perfect, but that's a feel-good win. Hopefully that's something that the Rangers can build on. The Rangers couldn't have felt good about the way they were playing overall going into the break. I know they got the big win against Ottawa, but they've been scuffling lately. It's a huge win here. It's a character win. They were not at their best, and they still found a way to rally and take down one of the truly elite teams in this league. So I think you got to be feeling pretty good about the Rangers getting 2 points in this game. Just going to take a quick break here, then we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. Do want to talk about the Rangers. Did they actually deserve to win this game? That's a topic we're going to get into in just a second. First, though, we definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. So kind of the debate that you could come up with coming into this game, because as we mentioned, it was not all perfect, but coming out of this game, the question, did the Rangers really deserve to win this one? Did they really deserve the 2 points? I felt coming into this game that a win of any kind against the Avalanche, when you consider how poor the Rangers played for good chunks of the entire month of January, when you consider the quality of the opponent, when you consider the long layoff. Now, on one hand, the Rangers should be back. They should be refreshed. They should be ready to go. But it's a little bit of a wild card, right? Being off for that amount of time, you never know exactly how a team is going to respond to that. So to me, 2 points of any kind in this game would be awesome for the Rangers. Now, the Rangers, based on how they played in the first 2 periods and kind of just squeaking away with the win, they kind of tested that theory of mine at least a little bit. But once again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think you still have to feel pretty good about this one. Again, knocking off a quality opponent, winning the game in overtime. Obviously, a lot of, fireworks at the end of this game. The deserve to win-o-meter did not favor the Rangers at all after this one. I believe the Avalanche were at like 72% win probability or something like that. So there's that. But I do think, again, there is something to be said for just hanging in there, battling until the end, not giving up, putting your best foot forward at key points in the game, being at your best in the third period when you have not been at your best for the first 2 periods. And obviously, 3-on-3 overtime, it's always going to be a little bit of a crapshoot, but guys have to dig down and find a way to get the job done. Rangers were, of course, able to do that. As far as like the bad points of this game, I didn't like their start at all. You've got Gustafsson taking a holding penalty against 57-year-old Zach Parise. Didn't really need to happen. Not too long after that, Kakko takes a tripping penalty against Miles Wood, in the offensive zone. And that's all. This is less than 6 minutes into the game. Trocheck probably got away with a trip in the neutral zone. They didn't call that. Lafreniere also took a penalty in the first period, but we won't count that because the Avalanche player that got tripped, I believe it was Wood here, clearly tripped over his teammate's stick. It was a bad call. Not a whole lot you can do about that one. But also, the Avalanche, they get a rush into the Rangers zone just 15 seconds into the game. Rangers are already forcing Jonathan Quick to have to make a really quality save there with his blocker, which is exactly what he did. The Rangers only had 17 shots on net in the first 2 periods combined. It's not a completely pitiful total, but it's not great either. And not enough quality scoring chances there in general. Now, Georgiev did make a couple nice saves here and there against his old team because, of course, he did. But, again, just not enough second chance opportunities, not enough chaos in front of Alex Georgiev. Too many guys settling for chances from, along the boards or the blue line, whatever it might be. And just not too many shots from the Rangers in the first 2 periods. They looked like they were destined for the back of the net. You had a couple of turnovers, too. There was a bad one where Jones got the puck to Gustafsson behind the Ranger net. Gustafsson moved it up to Pitlick along the boards. Wood comes in and steals it. Quick has to stone him right there on the doorstep. There was also at the start of the second period, Quick had to make 3 straight saves, and the Rangers just not looking sharp at the start of the second period. So there are things you can nitpick for sure, but on the plus side, I thought the Ranger penalty kill was outstanding. Touch on that briefly. earlier in today's episode. And obviously, Jonathan Quick has a hand in that as well. But the Rangers really look good on the PK. And they kept McKinnon and Makar and Rantanen mostly in check. Those are by far the three biggest threats on the Avalanche. And again, a lot of that was Quick, but those three never really took over the game. And the Rangers, sounds like, per Laviolette, they made a little bit of a defensive adjustment after the first goal was scored by McKinnon. A little bit more on that in just a second here. Unsung hero of the night. This is something that we're going to be doing a little bit more often going forward. I'm going to go with K'Andre Miller. He was engaged, locked in the entire game. People have been wanting him to play with a little bit more of an edge, a little bit more nastiness, and he did that. There was one big example of that. We'll get to that in just a second. I know a lot of people are going to look at the goal by Nathan MacKinnon, and obviously he went past Miller on that play, and Miller didn't look great there, but, it is Nathan MacKinnon, one of the best players in the league, obviously, and Peter Laviolette actually took the blame for that goal because he said that the Rangers, they weren't really prepared with the way they were playing defense with the 1-3-1. They weren't really prepared to deal with McKinnon's speed through the neutral zone. And that being the case, he felt like that was kind of on him for not having the Rangers, in an alignment that would best, slow McKinnon down. And obviously they made some adjustments per Laviolette after that. And obviously, held the Avalanche in check the rest of the way. But Miller was great. Again, keep in mind, he's out there without Jacob Trouba, the guy that he's played the vast majority of his NHL career with. I mean, it's got to be at least 90% of the time that Miller's out there, at least 5v5. He's out there with Jacob Trouba. Trouba was still suspended for the one more game here. So Miller's playing with Braden Schneider. The two of them haven't played together all that often. He was also second on the Rangers in time on the ice with 22 minutes and 17 seconds. So he stepped up big in that department as well. He was literally 1 second behind Adam Fox as far as most time on the ice for the Rangers. Had the primary assist on the Panarin goal. Again, nobody on the Rangers really had to do a whole lot here. I mean, Mikko won the faceoff, and that's big. And, Schneider makes a pass to Miller. Miller gets it to Panarin. But, hey, anytime you get the puck to Artemi Panarin, that's a good play. And obviously Miller got it to Panarin on what turned out to be the game-tying goal here. And most encouraging is the way that he battled Rantanen early in the game. Kind of out of nowhere, all of a sudden, Miller and Rantanen are really going at it, basically in a wrestling match. Kreider was paired off with McKinnon while this was happening. But, again, people have been wanting a little bit more edge from K'Andre Miller. The two of them were tangled up in front of the Ranger net. Rantanen with a hard cross-check to Miller's back. This is after they'd kind of been going back and forth. Miller got back up from this, and he didn't, if you notice, if you watch the replay, he wasn't immediately ready to, attack Rantanen. But when Rantanen cross-checked Miller, he kind of also fell backward on top of Jonathan Quick. And when Miller noticed that he was, making contact with Quick and was on top of Quick, that's when Miller, really went off. That's when he grabbed Rantanen almost in like a chokehold, like a headlock, and takes him and just throws him down back first onto the ice. And they were kind of wrestling after that. And they're both in the penalty box and they're yelling back and forth. And I think, Ranger fans in general, January, there just wasn't enough fire and edge from this team. And Miller's one of those guys you'd like to see more of that very thing from. Obviously he's somebody that he's a big guy out there and he does rack up some hits, but I think people are just looking for a little bit more edge from him. And, they got it in this instance here. And the other awesome part about this is that in the middle of all this chaos, Miller technically drew a penalty. He got the Rangers a power play because Rantanen was assessed 2 for roughing and 2 for cross-checking. Miller only got the 2 for roughing. So that was very good to see as well. K'Andre Miller, your unsung hero of this game. And obviously somebody that, again, I feel like has mostly been a good player since the Rangers drafted him. A little bit of an uneven first half of the season by his own admission. Not the best season that he's had thus far, but obviously you hope that he starts to get it going. And he's one of many Ranger players that I think, and we've talked about this, we're all hoping that their best hockey this season is still in front of them. He's one of many players that I think fit that description. And when you consider the fact that the Rangers are in first place, despite that being the case, they're not in as bad of a situation as I think a lot of people might be saying. But, we'll see what happens going forward. Another big game on Wednesday against Tampa. We'll be back here to talk about everything that happens in that game. But as always, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. And definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel as we are now closing in on 2,500 subscribers. Anybody that's already subscribed, thank you very much. And as always, I will see you guys next time.